December 16th, 1944, 5:30 a.m. The biting pre-dawn air hung heavy over the frozen, shell-scarred slopes of the Schnee Eifel, nestled along the precarious Belgian-German border. Shivering, their breath misting in the frigid air, German soldiers huddled in makeshift positions, steeling themselves for the onslaught that was about to erupt in offensive history'd remember as the Battle of the Bulge. This was to be their most ambitious operation since the lightning-fast blitzkrieg campaigns that had stunned Europe in 1940. Beyond the crest of that icy hill, concealed within the dense Ardennes forest, lurked a force of over 200,000 Wehrmacht troops, fueled by a dangerous and ultimately fatal misjudgment of their American adversary. They had been force-fed a steady diet of propaganda, meticulously designed to portray the American GI as a creature of comfort, reliant more on abundant resources than true grit. These citizen soldiers, they were led to believe, were soft, untested, and utterly unprepared for the harsh realities of war, especially when compared to the battle-hardened veterans of the Within hours, that carefully constructed illusion would be brutally shattered in a deafening storm of American firepower. Every single GI carried what General George S. Patton, in a candid letter to his ordnance chief, dated January 26, 1945, would later eloquently describe as the greatest battle implement ever devised: the M1 Garand semi-automatic rifle. In stark contrast, the standard-issued German Kar-9 8K bolt-action rifle was, in the unforgiving crucible of combat, woefully obsolete. The average German soldier in 1944 was still armed with essentially the same rifle his father had carried amidst the mud and blood of the World War. I trenches back in 1918, the Carabiner 98 Kurs, a sturdy but antiquated bolt-action rifle descended directly from the Mauser 8098. After each and every shot, the soldier was forced to manually cycle the bolt, a clunky, time-consuming process of lifting, pulling back, pushing forward, and locking down in the chaos and terror of combat. This translated to a maximum effective rate of fire of perhaps 15 aimed rounds per minute, and that was only for a highly skilled and experienced shooter under ideal conditions. German infantry doctrine, deeply ingrained and meticulously practiced, revolved around the MG42 machine gun, a truly formidable weapon, capable of spitting out a staggering 1,200 rounds per minute. Riflemen were therefore primarily tasked with a support role, protecting and supplying the machine gun teams. Their K9 8K rifles were considered secondary weapons, intended primarily for precision shots, and this doctrine had served them well, from the swift conquests of Warsaw and Paris to the disparate battles fought at the very gates of Moscow. But the Americans, with their seemingly endless supply of advanced weaponry, were about to rewrite the very rules of infantry combat. Every American infantryman carried a semi-automatic rifle, a marvel of engineering that could fire 8 rounds as fast as he could pull the trigger, and then reload a fresh clip in under 3 seconds. While a typical German squad relied on a single machine gun and 9 rifles, an American squad boasted 1 machine gun, 1 Browning automatic rifle bar, and a full 11 M1 Garands. The disparity in firepower was not just significant, it was immense. This glaring reality had begun to dawn on some German officers as early as the North Africa campaign in 1943, although most initially dismissed the early reports as exaggerated. However, after the bloody and costly engagements at Kasserine Pass, increasingly worried German officers sent detailed reports back to Berlin, highlighting the alarmingly large number of semi-automatic rifles they were encountering in American hands. The reaction from the German High Command revealed a dangerous and profound failure to accurately grasp the sheer scale of American industrial capacity. They initially assumed confusion with fully automatic weapons, or Thompson submachine guns, stubbornly clinging to the belief that mass production of semi-automatic rifles in such staggering quantities was simply impossible given American manufacturing methods. They were, tragically, devastatingly wrong. By February 1943, the venerable Springfield Armory and the renowned Winchester Repeating Arms Company were churning out over 4,000 M1 Garands * per day. Day. The Allies could boast that over 3 million of these revolutionary rifles had already been manufactured and distributed. The German war industry, even with a widespread use of slave labor and the implementation of total mobilization, managed to produce only a tiny number of experimental semi-automatic rifles, a mere trickle compared to the American flood. According to U.S. Army records from the North African campaign, captured German prisoners expressed open disbelief and astonishment when shown verified American supply figures. One captured German report from Tunisia, now carefully preserved in the U.S. National Archives, bluntly stated, "American infantry units appear to possess semi-automatic weapons as standard issue. This cannot be verified as it implies an industrial capacity beyond reasonable estimation." June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach, 8 a.m. The heavily fortified German 352nd Infantry Division stubbornly defended their meticulously prepared positions overlooking the deadly expanse of Easy Red Sector. German military records from the engagement, meticulously gathered and captured after the hard-won breach of the beachhead, describe the sheer, overwhelming volume of American rifle fire as nothing short of astounding. One German after-action report chillingly noted, "The enemy infantry maintained continuous rifle fire while advancing. No pauses for bolt manipulation were observed. The volume of fire surpassed machine gun positions. The brutal hedgerow battles that followed D-Day only served to magnify the existing firepower disparity. In the claustrophobic, confined terrain of the Normandy bocage, engagement distances rarely exceeded 100 meters. The vaunted German doctrine of long-ranged marksmanship, honed over decades of training, became largely irrelevant. What truly mattered was the sheer volume of accurate fire delivered quickly and relentlessly." A captured German training document from the 3rd Fallschirmjäger Division, dated July 1944, grimly acknowledged the stark American advantage. "Enemy rifle squads produce firepower equivalent to our machine gun emplacements. Conventional suppression tactics are ineffective against units equipped with semi-automatic rifles." German ordnance officers, who meticulously inspected captured M1 Garands, whenever possible, marveled at the extraordinary quality of manufacture achieved at such a massive scale. The rifle operated on a gas-abraded system, ingeniously using expanding gases from fired cartridges to automatically reload the weapon. The en-bloc clip system allowed for lightning-fast reloading in a matter of seconds. Most significantly, the rifle was manufactured to tolerances that German industry, stretched to its breaking point, simply could not match in mass production. A Wehrmacht technical intelligence report from August 1944, painstakingly captured within enemy files, and now held in the British military archives, stated with a hint of grudging admiration, "The M1 rifle demonstrates mass production techniques that we cannot replicate. Components showed precise tolerances maintained across thousands of examples. Parts interchangeability is absolute. Any component from one rifle functions perfectly in another." The WWII G43 was the desperate German attempt to answer the M1 Garand, but the cold, hard production realities spoke volumes. While every American infantryman carried a standard issue M1, the G43 was primarily issued to snipers and specialized troops. Total verified German production reached a mere 42,713 throughout the entire war. A pathetic figure compared to the over 5.4 million M1 Garands that rolled off American assembly lines. The Battle of the Bulge would prove the crippling firepower disparity in the most brutal and undeniable terms. The Germans achieved a degree of tactical surprise, initially attacking with overwhelming numerical superiority in many sectors. Yet, despite this advantage, small units of fiercely determined Americans, theoretically outnumbered and often surrounded, managed to hold their ground, stubbornly refusing to yield thanks to their superior firepower. December 17, 1944, Elsinborn Ridge. Official U.S. Army combat interviews, meticulously conducted immediately after the battle and carefully preserved in military archives, documented the harrowing experience of the men of the 99th Infantry Division. Outnumbered by as much as 3-1 in some areas, they somehow managed to hold the critical line, primarily due to the sheer, unrelenting volume of rifle fire they could generate. One infantry sergeant vividly reported, "We just kept firing. 8 rounds. Reload. Another 8 rounds. The Germans simply couldn't advance through that wall of lead." German casualties in the first week of the offensive far exceeded all pre-battle planning estimates. A captured operational order from the 12th SS Panzer Division grimly noted, "American small arms fire impedes movement, even with numerical superiority. Each enemy position must be considered an automatic weapon emplacement." The numbers, stark and unforgiving, told an undeniable story. By December 1944, American factories had produced over 4 million M1 Garands. Springfield Armory reached its peak production in January 1944, manufacturing astounding 122,001 rifles that month, a staggering 3,936 per day, or a mind-boggling 164 per hour of continuous, relentless production. The Springfield Armory workforce was a shining example of American industrial mobilization. By June 1943, women comprised a remarkable 43% of the workforce. 5,210 women out of a total of 12,957 employees. These dedicated workers, many without any prior manufacturing experience, produced weapons that consistently exceeded even the most stringent German quality standards. Winchester repeating arms. Company contributed a substantial 513,880 rifles to the all-important war effort. International Harvester, traditionally a manufacturer of agricultural equipment, successfully and efficiently converted its production lines to produce 337,623 M1 Garands. Harrington and Richardson would add another 428,600 rifles during and immediately after the war. This distributed production meant that no single devastating air raid could cripple American rifle production. The M1 Garand fundamentally and irrevocably changed infantry tactics. American squads could execute mobile fire assaults, confidently advancing while maintaining continuous fire superiority. Official U.S. Army training films from 1943, carefully preserved in military archives, clearly demonstrate this revolutionary technique. Soldiers advanced in skirmish lines, each man capable of delivering 8 aimed shots while on the move. German tactical doctrine, rigidly codified in their 1943 infantry manual, presumed the use of bolt-action rifles for fire and movement. Their carefully calculated estimates for suppressive fire, ammunition consumption, and assault tactics all tragically assumed a rate of fire that American Gs routinely exceeded by a factor of 3. The U.S. Army Field Manual, 7-10, Infantry Rifle Company, 1944 edition, built entire tactical concepts around the revolutionary concept of semi-automatic firepower. The M1 semi-automatic rifle provides the basis of infantry firepower. All tactical movement assumes the ability to maintain rifle squad fire. A semi-automatic rifle was only truly effective with an adequate and consistent ammunition supply. Here, too, American industry achieved a staggering and almost incomprehensible scale. The Lake City Army Ammunition Plant in Missouri, spanning a vast 3,900 acres, produced billions of rounds of ammunition during the war years. While the specific output of .30-06 ammunition remains unverified, the total ammunition production reached an astonishing 7 billion rounds, enough to sustain an unprecedented and relentless volume of fire. German ammunition allocations, meticulously documented in Wehrmacht supply records, typically provided a meager 60 rounds per rifleman for a major offensive operation. In stark contrast, American Gs carried 80 rounds in bandoliers as a basic combat load, with a near-limitless resupply readily available from the vast logistical network that tirelessly supported them. January 1945. The German offensive had stalled, bled dry by fierce resistance and dwindling supplies. American forces launched a counterattack in brutally frigid conditions. The severe winter weather, which should have favored the defenders, instead revealed yet another distinct advantage of the M1 Garand. Cold weather severely impacted the operation of bolt-action rifles. Frozen hands struggled to manipulate the stiff bolts. Oil thickened, making the action sluggish and unreliable. The M1 Garand, with its semi-automatic action, only required a simple trigger pull, operable even while wearing thick winter gloves. The end-block clips could be loaded quickly and easily, with numb fingers, while German soldiers were forced to painstakingly load individual cartridges into their K98K magazines. U.S. Army medical records from the Battle of the Bulge recorded significantly lower rates of frostbite among American riflemen compared to German forces, partially attributable to the reduced exposure during reloading and firing. March 1945. As American forces prepared to cross the Rhine, the German defenders faced an impossible calculus. A Wehrmacht planning document, captured at Remagen. Calculated defensive requirements, based on traditional firepower ratios. It assumed that one defender could effectively engage 3 attackers, a standard military doctrine dating back to the Napoleonic era. But this calculation crucially assumed an equal rate of fire. With the M1 Garand, the American attackers could generate approximately 3 times the rate of fire of the beleaguered German defenders. The traditional mathematics of defense simply collapsed. The Rhine crossings succeeded with significantly lower than anticipated casualties for the Allied planners, largely due to the overwhelming small arms fire that effectively suppressed German positions. The remarkable story of the M1 Garand is inextricably linked to the unparalleled scale of American industrial mobilization. Springfield Armory in Massachusetts transformed from a relatively modest government arsenal into a colossal manufacturing complex. The main production building stretched for over a mile in length. Each rifle underwent a staggering 1,000 distinct operations performed by highly specialized machines. Production reached extraordinary levels of efficiency. In 1940, it required a painstaking 117 labor hours to manufacture a single M1 Garand. By 1943, this had been dramatically decreased to just 75 labor hours. By 1945, Springfield Armory could complete a rifle in a mere 31 labor hours, and at a remarkably low cost of only $31 per rifle, down from $83 at the start of the war. The transformation of the workforce was equally remarkable. The proportion of female workers increased from 20% in June 1942 to an impressive 43% just a year later. These diligent workers, trained in weeks rather than years, operated these specialized machines that ensured perfect parts interchangeability, an achievement that German master craftsmen, despite years of rigorous apprenticeship, could not consistently replicate. The M1 Garand was also significantly easier to train on than a bolt-action rifle. U.S. Army training records clearly showed that recruits could achieve basic proficiency in a mere 2 weeks, compared to the months required to truly master a bolt-action. The semi-automatic action was far more forgiving of imperfect technique. Even an anxious or inexperienced soldier could still fire effectively. At Fort Benning, Georgia, the infantry school revolutionized training around the capabilities of the M1 Garand. Training reports from 1943 showed a dramatic improvement in recruit qualification. Scores after the widespread adoption of the semi-automatic rifle. The rate of recruits qualifying as expert increased by a remarkable 40% compared to prior bolt-action rifle training. Even before the pivotal D-Day landings, the Italian campaign had already demonstrated the clear superiority of the M1. At Monte Cassino, from January to May 1944, the 34th, 36th, and 45th infantry divisions engaged elite German paratroopers in brutal mountain warfare, where traditional doctrine held that bolt-action rifles would excel due to the perceived need for long-range accuracy. Instead, American forces quickly discovered that volume of fire was far more critical than pinpoint accuracy in the challenging mountain combat. The ability to rapidly engage multiple targets while ascending steep terrain proved decisive, while specific documentation regarding the M1's precise use at Monte Cassino is limited. These divisions were, crucially, fully equipped with the M1 Garand as standard issue. As per their tables of organization and equipment, the German effort to match the M1 Garand ultimately failed utterly. WWII, the German semi-automatic rifle, suffered from debilitating reliability issues and severely limited production. Total verified production reached a mere 42,713, less than 10% of the staggering American M1 production. The G43 required extensive and time-consuming hand-fitting during assembly. Effective quality control proved virtually impossible in the increasingly chaotic conditions of late-war Germany. Each rifle required specialized maintenance by highly trained armorers. When they malfunctioned, as they frequently did according to internal German ordnance reports, they quickly became expensive and largely useless clubs. Technical assessments of captured Wehrmacht weaponry, meticulously seized by Allied forces, consistently rated the G43 as inferior to the M1 Garand in terms of reliability, accuracy, and ease of maintenance. Tellingly, German soldiers would often choose to use captured M1 Garands in preference to their own semi-automatic rifles when the opportunity presented itself, despite strict regulations prohibiting the use of enemy weapons. Reports from the Pacific Theater, painstakingly gathered and disseminated through intelligence channels, provided German staff officers with further irrefutable evidence of American firepower superiority. Japanese forces, employing tactics broadly similar to German doctrine, and equipped primarily with Arisaka bolt-action rifles, were being systematically decimated by American forces armed with the M1 Garand. The Battle of Iwo Jima from February to March 1945, occurring concurrently with the crucial Rhine crossings in Europe, unequivocally demonstrated that American GIs could decisively defeat fanatical defenders in even the most challenging terrain. Through their superior firepower at the individual level, these grim reports, when they finally reached German commanders through neutral sources, only reinforced the growing sense of hopelessness that permeated their ranks. Post-war interviews meticulously conducted by the U.S. Army Center of Military History provide critical testimony regarding the devastating German reaction to the overwhelming American firepower. SLA Marshall's combat interviews, conducted immediately after engagements, consistently recorded German prisoners expressing profound dismay and astonishment at the American rifle capability. Field Marshal Albert Kassoring, commander of German forces in Italy, wrote candidly in his post-war memoirs, "The American infantryman, armed with his semi-automatic rifle, possessed a firepower advantage that we could never overcome. Our tactical advantages were meaningless when each enemy soldier could fire 8 rounds to our 1." General Asebon Mantefel, who commanded during the desperate Battle of the Bulge, testified during his post-war interrogation, "The American semi-automatic rifle gave their infantry a decisive advantage. We could not generate sufficient suppressive fire with our bolt-action rifles to permit movement." The final production figures tell the entire tragic story in stark and undeniable terms. Verified M1 Garand production from official records: Springfield Armory 4,188,669, Winchester 513,880, International Harvester 337,623, Harrington and Richardson 428,600, for a grand total of 5,468,772 rifles. Verified German semi-automatic production Guyer 43s. All variants 42,713, a staggering 13.6 or closer to a 6-to-1 ratio decisively favoring the Americans. Peak production rate: Springfield Armory 3,936 M1 Garands per day, January 1944. All German factories combined, approximately 300 semi-automatic rifles per day. To effectively support millions of M1 Garands, a vast and complex logistical system was absolutely essential. By 1945, American supply lines were delivering an astounding 20 million rounds of ammunition per day to European forces, along with enough spare parts to maintain approximately 3 million rifles and complete overhaul capability at the depot level. German logistics, meticulously documented in Wehrmacht administrative records, struggled to provide even basic ammunition allotments. The standard allocation of just 60 rounds per man for offensive operations compared poorly with the American basic combat load of 80 rounds, with near limitless resupply readily available. The economic aspect also proved decisively important. An M1 Garand cost the U.S. government just $31 in 1945, down from $83 at the start of the war, thanks to continuous manufacturing improvements. The 350 Reichsmark cost of the G43 was nearly 4 times that when adjusted for purchasing power. Parity. However, the M1 proved to be far more reliable and significantly easier to maintain, a cost-effectiveness that rippled throughout the entire supply chain. American factories churned out M1 Garands using highly specialized machinery that demanded a hefty initial investment, but drastically reduced the per-unit cost. German factories, constantly under threat from Allied bombing and frequently relocated, never achieved comparable economies of scale. The U.S. National Archives hold extensive documentation of the German response to the overwhelming American firepower. Intelligence reports from interrogations consistently showed German soldiers and officers expressing astonishment at the sheer volume of fire emanating from American small arms. One particularly revealing document, a German training circular from December 1944, attempted to prepare troops for facing American forces. The enemy rifleman must be regarded as the operator of an automatic weapon. Traditional fire and movement tactics must be adjusted accordingly. Expect continuous fire from all enemy positions. General George S. Patton's assessment ultimately proved in heartfelt January 26, 1945, letter to Major General Levin H. Campbell, Jr., Chief of Ordnance. Patton unequivocally wrote, "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised." This powerful written declaration came after carefully observing the rifle's remarkable performance throughout the grueling European campaign. Patton understood that wars are not primarily won by individual heroism, but by superior firepower consistently delivered by ordinary soldiers. The rapid advance of his legendary Third Army was made possible, in part, because infantry units could unleash overwhelming firepower without constantly waiting for machine gun support. The M1 allowed squads to effectively engage and suppress the enemy with a level of sustained fire that was previously unheard of, fundamentally altering the very dynamics of combat. John C. Garand, the brilliant Canadian-American designer, created far more than just a rifle. Born GNTS Garand, he began his groundbreaking development work at the Springfield Armory in 1919. His revolutionary design, finalized in 1932 and formally adopted on January 9, 1936, was meticulously optimized for mass production by semi-skilled laborers. Garand remarkably assigned all patent rights to the U.S. government, receiving no royalties despite his ingenious invention being produced in the millions. His design, philosophy, and ease of manufacturability perfectly embodied core American industrial principles. The M1 Garand represented American values translated into steel and wood, while German military culture tended to emphasize elite units with specialized weaponry. American Doctrine, in contrast, equipped every infantryman with the best available technology. It was mass production that made advanced capability universally available. This democratization of firepower mirrored American society itself. The rifle that effectively won the war was manufactured by housewives and teenagers, carried by citizen soldiers, and supplied by an arsenal of democracy that rightly considered industrial might to be a crucial component of military strength. The Garand was far more than just a tool of war. It was a powerful symbol of American ingenuity and the seemingly limitless power of its industrial base. The M1 Garand's undeniable superiority had strategic implications far beyond tactical firefights. American commanders could confidently plan operations, knowing that their infantry possessed an inherent and significant firepower advantage. German commanders, in stark contrast, had to constantly account for being outgunned at the most basic level. This affected everything from routine patrol operations to large-scale offensives. Small American units could operate independently, secure in the knowledge of their firepower dominance. German units, however, required constant machine gun support for virtually any offensive action, severely limiting their tactical flexibility. Military historians consistently identify the M1 Garand as a decisive factor in the ultimate American victory. Dr. John Ellis, in his seminal work, The Sharp End of War, calculated that American infantry firepower superiority contributed to a remarkable 40% reduction in casualties compared to what forces armed primarily with bolt-action rifles would have sustained. The official history of the U.S. Army, the United States Army in World War II, unequivocally noted, the semi-automatic rifle gave the American infantryman a definite superiority that was plainly evident on every battlefield. Today, the M1 Garand remains an iconic symbol of that era, proudly displayed in museums worldwide as the legendary weapon that won World War II. For the surviving German veterans who faced it in combat, the rifle symbolized American industrial dominance over traditional German military prowess. The rifle that General Patton so eloquently called the greatest battle implement ever, devised undeniably proved him right through cold, hard, mathematical certainty. It didn't just win individual firefights. It proved that industrial democracy could more effectively produce and equip its soldiers than a totalitarian militarism ever could. The M1 Garand's superiority was confirmed once again during the brutal Korean War from 1950 to 1953, when communist forces launched relentless human wave attacks. UN forces, crucially equipped with M1 South, could generate sufficient firepower to break those attacks that might well have overwhelmed units armed with less effective bolt-action rifles. Interestingly, When West Germany cautiously rebuilt its military into the Bundeswehr in the 1950s, they immediately adopted semi-automatic rifles, having learned a bitter and unforgettable lesson from the grim years of 1944 to 1945. No modern army still equips its infantry primarily with bolt-action rifles. Every modern assault rifle owes a clear debt to the fundamental design philosophy underlying the M1 Garand's extraordinary success. The principle of semi-automatic fire for every infantryman, firmly established by the M1, became universal military doctrine. The German G43, developed as a direct response to facing the M1 Garand in combat, influenced the design of the Soviet AK-47, which, in turn, heavily influenced all subsequent infantry weapons. The M1 Garand did far more than simply win a war. It revolutionized the very nature of warfare itself, proving that firepower at the individual level could be as tactically decisive as heavy artillery or tanks. The M1 Garand embodied American production philosophy, meticulously designed for efficient mass production rather than painstaking handcraftsmanship. Every component was specifically engineered for manufacture by specialized machines operated by minimally trained workers. This revolutionary approach would come to dominate global manufacturing for decades after the war. While traditional German production philosophy had emphasized skilled craftsmen producing limited quantities of highly complex weapons, American philosophy emphasized simplified designs produced in vast quantities by ordinary workers. The failure of the G43 was therefore not just technical, but also fundamentally philosophical. It was designed for an industrial system that simply could not adequately support its demanding production requirements. The M1 Garand represented far more than just a military victory. It proved that a democratic industrial society could effectively defeat totalitarian militarism through superior organization and unparalleled production capabilities. Every single rifle was tangible evidence that free workers in a democracy could outproduce slave labor in a dictatorship. German soldiers who faced the M1 Garand learned this crucial lesson in the most direct and unforgettable way possible, through the unrelenting, continuous hail of devastating fire. They had been told, repeatedly and emphatically, that they were superior warriors facing weak, materialistic Americans. Instead, they tragically discovered that they were obsolete soldiers facing the undeniable future of war. When German forces finally surrendered in May 1945, they were defeated not only militarily but also technologically and industrially. The M1 Garand stood as a powerful symbol of this comprehensive defeat, a mass-produced weapon that significantly outperformed German handcraftsmanship, carried by citizen soldiers who demonstrably outfought German professional soldiers. The math was inescapable and unforgiving. 5.4 million M1 Garands versus a mere 42. 713 German semi-automatic rifles, a 3-to-1 firepower advantage at the critical squad level, a quarter of the manufacturing cost through superior efficiency, half the training time due to a simplified design. Behind every single statistic lay a stark human reality. American soldiers survived because their M1 Garands gave them a critical firepower edge. German soldiers died because their Kar-9 8K rifles left them dangerously outgunned in virtually every engagement. The M1 Garand was precisely what Patton declared it to be: the greatest battle implement ever devised. It won the war not through mere elegance or precision, but through the overwhelming firepower provided by millions of meticulously manufactured rifles produced by the vast arsenal of democracy. For the German soldiers who faced it across countless battlefields, the M1 Garand was more than simply a superior weapon. It was tangible evidence that their entire worldview was fundamentally wrong. They had steadfastly believed in racial superiority, rigid military tradition, and the indomitable power of the warrior spirit. The M1 Garand chillingly proved that industrial capacity, democratic production, and citizen soldiers could decisively crush even the most professional military force in the world. The rifle that ultimately won the war did more than simply defeat a determined enemy. It demonstrated that free societies could organize, produce, and fight far more effectively than totalitarian states ever could. In 8 rounds of rapid semi-automatic fire, American democracy proved its undeniable superiority to German fascism. The German soldiers genuinely resented Patton's greatest battle implement But their resentment was really an admission of their own profound failure. An admission that they had challenged the wrong enemy with the wrong weapons based on entirely the wrong assumptions. The M1 Garand taught them, one brutal firefight at a time, that modern war is won not by warriors, but by workers. Not by individual heroes, but by the relentless power of industry. Not by clinging to tradition, but by embracing innovation. Ultimately, that was the M1 Garand's greatest victory, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that democratic industrial power could overwhelm any foe, no matter how professional, motivated, or ideologically committed they might be. The German soldiers who cursed, the distinctive ping of the en-bloc clip being ejected from a spent M1 were really cursing their own profound failure to understand what they were fighting against. Not just an army, but the very arsenal of democracy itself. The M1 Garand remains proudly displayed in military museums and private collections worldwide. Still functional after 8 decades of service. Still admired for its revolutionary design and enduring reliability. It stands as a timeless testament to American ingenuity, industrial might, and the democratic principle that the best equipment should be made available to every soldier, not just a select few elites. For those who faced in the theater of war, the M1 Garand etched itself into memory with an indelible mark, a weapon that took ordinary citizen soldiers and, through a clever feat of engineering, elevated them into a fighting force of considerable prowess. It stood as irrefutable proof that the tides of war would be turned not by creed or custom, but by the potent combination of technological advancement and sheer manufacturing might. Lauded as perhaps the finest instrument of battle ever conceived, its reputation was forged in the crucible of conflict, proving its mettle on every field of battle where it saw action. It was carried by men who understood the weighty responsibility they bore, that within their grasp lay democracy's most forceful reply to the encroaching shadows of tyranny and oppression. The Garand was more than just a rifle. It was a symbol of hope and a testament to the unwavering spirit of free peoples standing against the darkness.